Have you ever found yourself in a training situation where the delivery is so dry and boring that you suddenly find your main focus is the clock on the wall and trying to calculate how long it's going to be until you get released? When you look around the room, you also notice that those people who haven't fallen asleep already or who aren't staring vacantly out the window are probably browsing supermarket catalogues and immersing themselves in internet shopping. They're doing anything they can to avoid the droning sound of the trainer's voice as they read word for word from those horrible text-heavy PowerPoint slides being projected on the wall. Now, that's really not doing anything as far as achieving the outcomes in the training session. What I want to talk about in this video is just a few tips and tricks that you can implement to make your resources a little bit more effective and engaging when you're delivering training in the classroom.
So what are resources, you ask? Well, learning resources are pretty much anything that is used to support the learning. I find that sometimes trainers consider resources to be nothing more than textbooks, computers, and even, dare I say, pens and paper. Now, these are resources, but more traditional or mandatory kinds of resources that are required to undertake the training. But there are so many other resources that we have access to, and with a little bit of imagination, they can be used to create an even better learning experience. There are so many learning resources that we can use as part of the learning process, and some common examples include things like whiteboards, chalkboards, flip charts, handouts, pictures and charts, product samples, videos, PowerPoint slides, and any other sort of tactile or hands-on resources that have something to do with the content being delivered. When you plan your sessions and you think about the content you will need to teach, you should also be thinking about the resources that would best suit the context of the training and the characteristics of the learner group. Now, different people learn in different ways and they respond better to the types of resources that they prefer. So let's look at 4 specific categories of what we call multisensory resources or multisensory learning, and this can help us understand and select resources that are best suited to the context of your teaching. Firstly, and in no particular order, there are visual resources, which primarily use imagery to support the content that's being delivered in the training and include things like photos, illustrations, charts, and even physical or video demonstrations. These resources allow the learners to directly see examples that link to the content being delivered. Next, there's auditory resources. These include things like podcasts, videos containing narration, music, sound effects, and even the voice of the teacher. Something that's a little more traditional is, of course, reading resources. This essentially refers to resources that contain reading materials, things like written instructions and textbooks. Finally, we come to kinaesthetic resources. This refers to the kinds of things that the learner can touch and feel to get a first-hand idea about something, including textures, weights, and actual sizes. I've been to a number of presentations myself where the presenter has actually been quite thoughtful, and though they were talking about things and showing us pictures, it was really difficult to gauge sort of the size and context of specific things that they were talking about. So they actually brought along physical examples that they could pass around to the learner group, and it was just amazing how you were able to link that with what we were actually seeing and being told about from the presenter as well. Let's say, for example, that you needed to provide your learners with some information about a topic that they could refer to at a later date. So you decided that a reference sheet handout with written information would be appropriate. That's great. So you prepare a sheet with the necessary information on it that you can share with the learners, and here it is. Looking at this example here, let's face it, it's boring and uninviting. It just has no appeal. It isn't really tempting for someone to pick up and use as a reference because it's really hard to navigate. But having said that, the resource could easily be transformed into something that is appealing. In this second version, the handout has exactly the same content, and it's so much easier to find the information that you need. This is done simply by using some basic formatting functions to add color and headings. This not only appeals to those that like reading, but also includes features that appeal to visual learners. Now, this is just a very simple example of how resources can be made more dynamic and how to get them to work for you and your learners. And let's face it, this took very little additional work to create something that's going to work. Just like we saw in the last example, the use of color can definitely energize your resources and bring them to life. Now, that doesn't mean that you're obligated to use every color of the rainbow, but certainly using a selection of different colors is a great way to separate different sections of your resources, making them easier for the learner to navigate and find the information they need. For example, a cooking textbook may have color coding to identify different types of recipes, like canapes, entrees, main meals, and desserts. And the learner can make an association between the color and the content or topic. Now, if these sections were all in the same color, it would make the resource less appealing and again, harder to navigate.
In the next part of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the use of flip charts and whiteboards. We'll probably focus more on whiteboards, but very similar when we use those. Now, I want to share with you an experience I had at a market research event that I participated in once. Now, the presenter was asking us questions, and me and the rest of the panel, and we're doing a bit of a mind mapping sort of activity where we would respond to the questions with just words and things that we could think of. Now, the presenter was writing our responses up onto a whiteboard, but I was watching the presenter and they were scrawling this stuff on the whiteboard, just scrawling these words that were completely illegible, in tiny little text, and I couldn't read a single thing that she'd been writing up there. Now, I'm so, okay, well, maybe she has some purpose for using this. Now, after the mind mapping activity, then the presenter actually asked us to look at the responses on the board and sort of drill down a little bit further. And we were all sort of looking at each other going, well, we can't even read any of that scrawl that's been written on the whiteboard. So I think there was a really good example of, okay, sure, the idea of the mind mapping activity was fantastic, using a whiteboard, but there's no point using those resources if you don't use them properly, because the text was so unreadable that it was a waste of time for us.
Whiteboards and flip charts are a great resource that are particularly useful in a face-to-face class, but many online learning platforms like Zoom, as an example, have now incorporated virtual whiteboards to achieve exactly the same kinds of results. So let's look at using a whiteboard or flip chart for a brainstorming activity. The teacher presents a topic and the students think of different words and considerations related to the topic. The teacher records these on the whiteboard for the students to refer to later. In this example, the teacher has used a black marker and has quickly recorded the learner's ideas. It's messy and in some parts illegible. In the next example here, the teacher has used a number of different colors and ensured that the text is legible. Each point on the list is clear and easily identifiable. Now, if this was done on a flip chart, which is essentially large pieces of paper, the colourful version could even be kept and put on the wall for learners to refer to later in the training. Because I'm really not sure how many people would rush to review that first example in black and white. Now, something I used to do, certainly in my classes, was to use a flip chart quite often, try and make them as colourful and inviting as I possibly could, and I would actually hang each of those flip chart pages up around my classroom so that my students could refer to them whenever they wanted. This next example is a whiteboard I drew up the next morning using the responses that were given during a brainstorming session the previous day. My students were able to refer to this as they continue with their validation project. Use it as a bit of a reminder. You'll also be surprised how many of those students will take photos of your whiteboards and charts with their smartphones if you present them well. Now, in a virtual classroom, you can certainly encourage the learners to take and save a screenshot. Now, these become valuable resources that the students can refer to at any time, and the beauty is that they were part of the resources development, so they have some connection with it as well. I'd like to talk now about PowerPoint presentations, which have become an accessible and valuable resource to enhance the learning experience. But there are some important things to remember when using this resource, because PowerPoint slides can easily make or break the effectiveness of a presentation. You've probably heard the term death by PowerPoint. Well, believe me, it's a real thing. So let's look at some of the do's and don'ts when using PowerPoint as a resource. The first thing you need to understand before preparing PowerPoint slides is what is its purpose? What are you preparing these slides for, and what are you hoping to achieve? If your answer to this question is to guide me through the session so I know what to say to my students, you really need to think again. You are the presenter, and people attending your session want to hear what you have to say. The PowerPoint slides you prepare should provide a visual reference that supports and reinforces what you are saying as the presenter of the session. Now, I have to say that I have seen some hideous PowerPoint slides at presentations that I've attended in the past. Now, these are usually ones like the example you can see right now that are text heavy, no visuals, and the trainer is simply, or the presenter is simply reading word for word. Imagine if the slides I'm using right now to talk about resources looked like this. They contain all the information that I want to share with you, and imagine if I simply read the slide before moving on to the next slide that contains more text outlining the next lot of information. I mean, really, why bother? Why bother doing a presentation at all? Nobody's going to read the text on that slide, and if they do read it, they're definitely not going to be listening or paying attention to you or anything else that's going on. I would have been better off not holding a session and simply sending everybody a Word document that they can read for themselves in their own time, and it would probably be just as ineffective. Here are some pointers about things not to do when creating PowerPoint slides for your presentations. Please don't clutter the page with text and images. Your slides will be confusing and no one will be listening to you. Don't use excessive animation. There's almost nothing more annoying than watching every element on a slide bounce, twist, and dance onto the page. It's so tacky and unprofessional. Play with these animations, get them out of your system before you prepare your slides. I promise you will thank me later. Hearing dings, pings, whooshes, and swooshes every time something is clicked or appears on the stage is just as annoying as animated text. If the sounds don't actually serve a purpose, get rid of them. There's no point displaying the blueprints of the Taj Mahal on a PowerPoint slide either. It's simply too complicated. The same goes for charts and diagrams that you might be thinking of using. Keep them simple and to the point. In fact, your diagrams and charts should be simple enough that they speak for themselves. Let's face it, there are plenty of fancy fonts available and some of them look, pretty cool, but don't let that be the reason for you to use them. Using a stylized font can easily change the interpretation of the content. For example, using a really relaxed font like Comic Sans may give the viewer the impression that the content is not very important. Fancy fonts can also be very difficult to read. As I mentioned earlier, don't read the content of slides like it's a script. You should know the content, and if you are reading it, it won't sound natural. Your attendees will wonder what they're doing there. Now look, these are just some of the common mistakes people make when preparing slides for presentations. So have a think about it and really consider these when you're putting things together for your learners. Now let's look at some of the to-do things when preparing PowerPoint slides. Use simple dot points to highlight key concepts that you're talking about. Your dot points should be short and sweet and no more than a few words. Make sure that the images you use are supportive of the content and are appropriate to the audience you're presenting to. Try to keep the style of your images consistent as well. For example, avoid mixing real photos with cartoons. Have one or the other and be sure that they are relevant. You should also ensure that the quality of the images you use is appropriate. Poor quality images will quickly reduce the perception of quality from your attendees. You should also use crisp, clear, easy to read sans-serif fonts on your slides, like Calibri or Helvetica. Sans-serif means a font without feet. Avoid using serif fonts like Times New Roman. A serif font is a font with feet, and these fonts were not designed for reading on digital devices and screens. Be consistent with the font sizes that you're using. For example, make sure that the headings are the same size and appear in the same location. I try to base my formatting for bullet points and headings on whichever is the longest. Then I know that all the shorter headings will fit using the same font. For example, I prepared the dot points you can see on screen now. I based the font size on the second dot point because it's the longest. Then I knew that all the others would fit using that same font and font size. Allow plenty of white or free space around content of your slides and the content within your slides, and ensure that they're relaxed and comfortable to view. Keep your slides simple and don't try to cover multiple topics on a simple slide. Your session attendees will get confused. Each topic should ideally cover one specific idea, just like the slides I'm showing you now. The previous slide was about what not to do, and this slide is about what you should do. There's a clear separation. In the next slide, I'm going to show you an example of a PowerPoint slide that breaks all the rules that we've discussed, and then I'm going to show you another version where the design has been fixed up and incorporates all the to-do things that we've discussed. So what do you think? Well, let me tell you what I think. The page is cluttered, the animations are annoying and meaningless, the images are all random sizes and I'm not really sure why. The headings are inconsistent in size. There is too much text that no one will read. The headings are inconsistent in size and the font selection makes me think that the slide is maybe a joke. It looks like whoever designed this slide has just discovered the features of PowerPoint and has tried to incorporate as many as possible in the slide. They've also included some fancy fonts without considering the impact that they have on the viewers of the slide. This is definitely a what not to do slide. Let's look at the next slide that will present the same information, but the designer has considered the purpose of the slide and the impact it will have on the viewers. That's better. Now, this slide is clean. There's plenty of white space. The animations are not offensive. Dot points have been used to identify the key information and that huge big mound of text is gone. The images are consistent and evenly spaced. The fonts used are clear and easy to read. That huge paragraph of text, by the way, has been taken from there and put into the presenter's notes section, and this is what the presenter can actually say or narrate over the top of the slide. The content of the slide will reinforce what the presenter is saying. This slide is definitely a please do example. In this bite-sized tutorial, I've focused on just a couple of resources that are generally available, and we've looked at how to energize them with just a little bit of imagination. But remember, there's a limitless number of things that you can use to enhance the quality and effectiveness of your learner's experience. Product samples, audio-visual content, real equipment and tools, activities using tactile resources. The sky's the limit. The closer you can get your students to experiencing the real thing, the better the outcomes will be. So don't be a lazy trainer, be an innovative one. And it all starts with thinking outside of the box to make sure that you can use resources that will give your session participants the wow factor, keep them interested and engaged. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this tutorial interesting and helpful. And remember, you'll find heaps more useful information about vocational education and training in our other bite-sized tutorials.